First of all, I see that we need to be assured of this fact that God is at work in the affairs of this world. If we're going to think about God working and providing and provisioning and helping us, we need to be assured of this very fact that God is still at work in the affairs of our world. God has a purpose. God has a purpose in all that takes place. There's nothing that is taking place that God doesn't know about. God knows about everything that is happening, about every government that is in place, about every rule that is being given, about every instruction. You see, God knows these things. God is not aloof, that is, He's not far and from understanding what we experience and what we face here on earth. I said earlier, we sometimes give Satan too much credit. He's just a pawn in God's hand. Let me tell you, God is still on His throne and He's still the conqueror. He is still the one who reigns over all supremely. When we need to have a heavenly perspective of the affairs that are around us and begin to ask ourselves, well, what is God doing? What is God's purpose in this season that we're in? How many of you have sat back through lockdown, and even in this past 2 years, the world certainly has changed, has it not, because of COVID? And how many of us have sat back and said, what is God's purpose through this? How many of us really sat down and began to pray and say, Lord, what are you teaching me and what are you showing me with the affairs and the changes that are happening in this world? Have we just sat back and cowered down and we're fearful because of what the changes are, what's been advancing? We say, look at that, Satan is really advancing, Satan is conquering, Satan is causing all these problems. Folks, as a church, we believe in a great God and He's still in control. Maybe what we need to do is sit back and pray and say, Lord, would you show me your purposes and what you're trying to accomplish in this world and what you're trying to accomplish in my life, what you're trying to accomplish in my church. And that we need to really look to the Lord and ask Him to help us in this way. During this period of time where we're in lockdown, we're all thinking, well, this is terrible. We're sick of just sitting at home. We're sick of watching church online, and this is not right, and all these things. But what we're failing to see is what is God doing in the hearts and the lives of mankind. Is He drawing men at this time to begin to inquire about eternity? Is He using this time to bring fear and reality in the lives of the unsaved to seek out the Lord? Now let me say, if people are being saved because of the circumstances that we've gone through, well, I thank God that we did it. I thank God that we went through it. You see, God has a greater purpose than what we see. We have what, I like Jim Burke says, he said, we have a dashboard view, where we can only see what is in front of us and what reality is around us. But God has a heavenly perspective, and He's ordering the affairs of this world to accomplish His great purpose. Babylon fell to the Persians, and Cyrus the Great came on the scene. Now you say, well, that's a significant event. Back in that time, when Cyrus took over Babylon, that made the world news. That was one nation, one great nation that took another nation. And God used that. God used that for a particular reason, for a particular purpose. And why was it Cyrus? Why was it Cyrus that in particular at that time to be reigning? You see, God was ordering those affairs. God was still in control of nations, and He was still in control of governments. And the Bible tells us that the heart of the king is like rivers of water. He can turn it and change it in any direction that He wants. Church, be confident in this fact. God has not lost control of our present world.